It was a day that Tim had been eagerly anticipating, his first school trip to the grand theme park. The excitement had been building for weeks, not just for Tim, but for his parents too. After a year fraught with challenges, this outing was meant to be a gleaming highlight, a cherished memory in the making. The morning air buzzed with excitement as students chattered and gathered, ready to board the bus. But as Tim stepped forward, his path was suddenly blocked. A stern-faced teacher shook his head, indicating that Tim could not join. Confusion and disbelief washed over him as his mother's face crumbled into tears. "What's wrong, Mama?" Tim's voice trembled, his eyes wide with confusion and the threat of tears spilling over. He couldn't understand why he was being singled out, why he was being denied the joy that his classmates took for granted. His mother, struggling to find words, could only muster a repetitive murmur, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Tim's heart sank deeper with each apology, still clueless about the real reason behind this rejection. Desperate for answers, Tim pleaded with the teacher, but the man's expression remained unyielding. Around them, whispers began to spread among the parents, the air grew thick with tension. Just then, Stephen, a classmate, approached with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Why can't Tim come with us?" he asked loudly, drawing more attention to the already uncomfortable scene. Tim wished the earth would swallow him whole as the weight of the moment bore down on him. His chance for a memorable day was slipping away, and with each passing second, the mystery of his exclusion only deepened, leaving everyone around him grappling for answers. Tim's childhood had always been more responsibility than relaxation, being the eldest of 6. His family, though brimming with love, wasn't wealthy, which often meant sacrifices were frequent and necessary. This school trip, therefore, wasn't just a day out, it was a milestone, a rare opportunity for Tim to step into a world of carefree excitement, something his diligent, selfless nature had earned. His parents had set clear conditions: good behavior, good grades, and help around the house. Tim had not only met these expectations but exceeded them, all with the hope of exploring the thrilling world of roller coasters and merry-go-rounds he had only seen in videos. The night before the trip, despite the usual disruptions from his baby sister Rose, Tim managed to slip into a peaceful sleep filled with visions of laughter and looping rides. He had prepared everything with precision, from his outfit to the small stash of money he'd saved up for treats at the park, earned through odd jobs around the neighborhood. But as the morning unfolded, his dreams began to unravel, thread by thread, starting with being unceremoniously barred from boarding the school bus. As whispers swirled and sympathetic glances were cast his way, Tim's heart throbbed painfully against his chest. What had he done wrong? He replayed every rule, every promise in his mind, searching for a misstep. The reality of the situation was baffling, and with each passing moment, the excitement he had harbored transformed into a deep, sinking despair. As dawn broke, Tim, filled with anticipation, meticulously prepared for his day at the theme park, making snacks and assisting his elderly neighbor to earn just a little more for his day of fun. With everything packed and ready, his mother accompanied him to school, neither of them anticipating the storm that was about to unfold. Upon arriving, they found Tim's teacher, Mr. Foster, dutifully checking names against the roster. Tim, brimming with excitement, stepped up confidently when his turn came. However, Mr. Foster's expression changed to one of confusion as he scanned the list, causing a knot of anxiety to tighten in Tim's stomach. "Tim, you can't go on the bus. You are not on the list," Mr. Foster declared, the words slicing through the morning air like a chill. Tim's heart sank, his brows knitting together in bewilderment. How could his name not be there? Beside him, his mother's face drained of color, realization striking her as tears began to spill. The sight of her distress deepened Tim's confusion and concern. "What's wrong, Mama?" he asked, his voice tinged with worry as he gently rubbed her back in soothing circles. In his mind, Tim replayed the moment he had handed the permission slip to his parents, who had assured him they would handle everything. His mother's repeated apologies now echoed around him. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," she murmured, lost in her own turmoil. The crushing truth began to dawn on Tim: this was no oversight by the school. Something else, something personal, had gone awry. As he struggled to grasp the full extent of what had happened, the disappointment was palpable, mingling with the cool morning breeze, leaving him to wonder about the unseen hurdles that lay within his own family. In that moment, as the bus engine roared to life, Tim felt a profound sense of betrayal deeper than any disappointment he had ever known. The realization that his missed adventure was a result of his parents' oversight made the hurt even sharper. Tears welled up in his eyes as he caught the puzzled looks of his classmates, including Kevin, his best friend, who motioned for him to come and sit beside him. But Tim knew he couldn't board the bus, and before any chuckles or whispers could start among his peers, he turned and fled. He wanted to vanish, to escape the sympathetic stares and the well-meaning but painful pity in Mr. Foster's eyes. Tim's heart pounded as he dashed across the schoolyard. His vision blurred by tears, seeking refuge where no one could find him. He pushed past the empty halls, feeling every bit the outcast as his classmates headed to the theme park without him. Finally, he barricaded himself in the bathroom, huddling in a corner with his head buried in his arms, trying to muffle his sobs. The solitude was abruptly interrupted by the creak of the door and the sound of footsteps. Tim didn't need to look up to know who it was. Tim, Kevin's voice was soft, laden with concern. He crouched down beside Tim, not uttering another word, just offering his presence as a silent solace. Tim felt a flicker of comfort knowing Kevin was there, yet the weight of his disappointment remained crushing. A heavy stone pressing against his chest. Kevin stayed by his side, not speaking, but his presence spoke volumes, providing a quiet strength that Tim desperately needed in the eye of his emotional storm. In the silence of the school bathroom, a sanctuary from the chaos of childhood disappointments, Tim and Kevin shared a moment of quiet understanding that spoke louder than words. It was a communion only true friendship could forge. As Tim felt the crushing weight of his sadness, there was also a soothing warmth emanating from Kevin's silent solidarity, acting as a salve to his bruised spirit. Gradually, Tim raised his head, his eyes locking with Kevin's. There was no judgment in his gaze. Only profound empathy. Tim's voice started as a whisper, choked with emotion. "I did everything right, Kev," he murmured, his voice trembling. "I helped at home, got good grades, why did this happen?" As Tim's words spilled out, a torrent of disappointment and feelings of betrayal, Kevin listened with a solemn intensity. When Tim lamented over the broken promises, Kevin's hand found Tim's shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "I know it sucks, Tim," Kevin responded softly, his words simple yet filled with a deep understanding. "It's not fair." Those few words from Kevin resonated within Tim, comforting him in a way that only a friend's acknowledgement could. In the confines of that small bathroom, their bond was not just maintained but strengthened, deepened by a shared sorrow and mutual understanding. After some time, Kevin stood, offering his hand to Tim. "Come on, let's get out of here," he urged. Tim hesitated, a mix of reluctance and resolve playing across his features. But the encouragement in Kevin's eyes bolstered him, lending him the strength he needed. Grasping Kevin's hand, Tim stood, wiping away his tears. Together, they walked towards the door. With each step, Tim felt a measure of the weight lift from his shoulders. He wasn't alone. He had a friend who stood by him, and in that truth, he found the strength to face whatever lay ahead. With Kevin's reassuring presence at his side, the world outside the bathroom seemed a little less daunting. As Tim, with Kevin's reassuring presence at his side, stepped outside the school building, he was met with the sight of his mother waiting, her eyes red and swollen from crying. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air as Tim's heart pounded with a cacophony of emotions. Kevin gave him a supportive nod before stepping back, allowing Tim the space to confront the situation he had dreaded. Tim's mother's gaze lifted, widening with a tumultuous mix of hope and fear as her son approached. As Tim stood before her, her composure shattered, her voice breaking into a choked sob. "Tim, I'm so sorry," she cried, her hands reaching out in a desperate plea for understanding. Frozen, Tim struggled to navigate the flood of emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. "I wanted to tell you earlier, but I just couldn't find the words," she continued, her tears a poignant reflection of her internal struggle and guilt. Through her sobs, Tim's mother revealed the depth of her remorse. "I never wanted to let you down, Tim. We tried so hard to make it work," she confessed, her voice laden with sorrow, the regret in her words mirroring the pain of promises unkept. Tim listened, each word from his mother layering upon his tangled emotions, anger, confusion, and an unexpected pang of sympathy for the distress clearly etched on his mother's face. It was a tumultuous blend of feelings for such a young heart to bear, betrayal entwined with familial love, seeking understanding. Finally, overwhelmed by frustration and the need for answers, Tim's voice broke through the emotional storm. "Why, Mom? Why did you promise me I could go if we couldn't afford it?" His tone was a raw blend of hurt and a demand for clarity, pushing through the chaos of his feelings towards the truth that needed to be faced. As the harsh truth of the situation hung in the air, Tim's mother visibly flinched under the weight of her son's pointed questions. Tim, resolute and seeking clarity, stood firm, not ready to back down without understanding the full extent of the betrayal he felt. At that moment, Tim's father approached, his face etched with lines of worry, having left work in a hurry after receiving a frantic call from his wife. He took in the scene before him, his wife in tears, his son hurt and confused, and Kevin providing silent support. The contrast was stark against the usual backdrop of warmth and laughter that characterized their family. With a deep breath, he steeled himself for the difficult conversation ahead. Approaching cautiously, Tim's father tried to gauge the situation. "Tim, can you tell me what happened?" he asked gently. Tim looked up, his eyes a swirling storm of emotion. He recounted the morning's events, each word heavy with disappointment and confusion. His father listened, his heart sinking deeper with each detail relayed, his eyes occasionally flicking to his wife, whose tear-streaked face spoke volumes of her own turmoil and regret. Turning his gaze back to his father, Tim's voice cracked with a mixture of hope and dread. "Dad, why? Why did you guys let me believe I was going?" The sorrow in his father's eyes deepened, filled with regret and understanding of the pain his son felt. He knew this was a moment of truth, a time to mend what had been broken and explain the painful reality that had led to this heartbreaking misunderstanding. Gathering his family close, Tim's father's voice was steady yet laden with emotion, a testament to the gravity of what he was about to disclose. "There's something we need to talk about as a family," he started, making eye contact with each of them to emphasize the seriousness of the moment. He took a deep, steadying breath, ready to expose the hidden struggles and sacrifices that had silently shaped their recent lives. "We've been facing some tough financial times," he admitted, the weight of each word palpable in the air. His voice faltered as he continued, "I made some mistakes with our money, and it's put us in a difficult spot." He looked away, unable to meet Tim's intense, searching gaze. The admission struck a chord, a painful truth that had long been shielded from Tim, now laid bare. A surge of betrayal rose within Tim, mingling with a poignant sting of understanding. His father's mistakes, now revealed, were partly to blame for his shattered dreams, intensifying the emotional tumult within him. "You knew how much this meant to me," Tim voiced out, quivering with a mix of anger and disbelief. The revelation deepened his frustration and sadness, as he reflected on his role within the family. "I'm always the one who has to understand, to make do," he expressed, his voice tinged with resentment. "I never get anything new, it's always about what the younger ones need." The responsibility of being the eldest, always placing his needs last, felt crushingly heavy at that moment. Tim's thoughts lingered on the tangible implications of his family's financial hardships, but also on the emotional toll it exacted on him, highlighting the complex interplay of duty, love, and personal sacrifice within their family dynamic. "I'm always wearing hand-me-downs from our cousins," Tim continued, his voice threading a note of deep sadness through the air. "I can't remember the last time I had something that was just mine, not passed down. The stark reality of his situation, often overshadowed by daily routines, now stood vividly before them all, amplified by the day's unfortunate events. As his family absorbed his heartfelt words, Tim's heart felt heavier than ever. The financial burdens, now openly acknowledged, pressed down on him with newfound clarity. He gazed at his parents, noting the strain and guilt etched deeply across their faces. This shared burden brought a new layer of understanding, but also a profound sadness. He was trapped in a liminal space between his own palpable hurt and the empathy he felt for his family's enduring struggles. From a short distance, Mr. Foster, Tim's teacher, had been observing the unfolding scene. His concern had grown with each overheard word, prompting him to step forward, his expression one of deep empathy and understanding. "Tim, I'm sorry to hear about what's been going on," he began, his voice gentle and caring. The kindness in his tone offered a small comfort amidst the family's unfolding turmoil. "I wish there was something more I could do to help right now," Mr. Foster continued, his eyes reflecting a sincere compassion. "As your teacher, I feel a responsibility for all my students. And it pains me to see any of you upset like this." He looked earnestly at Tim, his desire to provide more than just words of comfort evident in his demeanor. His intention to assist resonated with Tim and his family, providing a glimmer of solace in a moment crowded with emotional challenges. Mr. Foster sighed, the lines on his face deepening with his concern. His presence, though marked by a professional boundary, was filled with genuine care, bridging the gap between educator and protector in that poignant moment. "Unfortunately, I can't change the situation for this trip," Mr. Foster said apologetically, his regret palpable. "The arrangements are already set, and there's no way to add another student at this point." His words, though understanding, finalized the harsh reality: Tim would not be joining his classmates this time. The door to this particular adventure had closed, and with it, a small spark of hope was extinguished in Tim's heart. But then, Mr. Foster's tone shifted, imbued with a new determination: "Let's start planning for the next trip. I want to make sure you can be part of it." His words reignited a flicker of hope within Tim, suggesting a future filled with possibilities yet to be explored. "We can work together on a plan, maybe even set up a fund for students who need financial help," Mr. Foster continued, his suggestion opening a new avenue that Tim hadn't considered. "I promise you, Tim, we'll find a way to make it happen next time." His firm commitment pierced through the lingering clouds of disappointment, casting a ray of hope. Gratitude mixed with a tinge of sadness in Tim's heart, comforted by the promise yet still feeling the sting of the current moment. Mr. Foster's words were like a beacon in the storm, a reminder that there were people who genuinely cared and were eager to assist. With a thoughtful expression, Mr. Foster turned to Tim and his family. "I have an idea," he began, sparking interest. "What if we organize a series of fundraisers? We could set up events at school to raise money, not just for Tim but for any student facing financial hurdles." His proposal was met with curious glances, and the idea of bridging the gap through community effort seemed not only promising but empowering. This suggestion brought a new level of community spirit to the table, showing Tim and his family that even in times of personal trials, there were avenues to explore and support systems ready to be mobilized. Mr. Foster's enthusiasm was infectious as he discussed practical steps toward fostering community support and inclusivity. "We can involve other parents and the school administration," he explained, his voice filled with a growing excitement. "I'm sure many families would be willing to help once they understand the situation." He painted a vivid picture of bake sales, car washes, and even a small community fair, each event a building block toward a greater goal. The concept of drawing support from the broader school community offered not just assistance, but a profound sense of unity. Everyone could contribute and make a significant difference. "The key is working together," Mr. Foster emphasized. "A collective effort can have a big impact." As he talked about how fundraisers could foster a sense of solidarity and teach students valuable lessons in empathy and cooperation, his vision of a community united for a common cause breathed new energy into the conversation. Tim felt a glimmer of hope stir within him. The thought that his situation could improve, not just for him, but for others in similar circumstances, was not only uplifting but empowering. The idea of community fundraisers gave him something to look forward to, a tangible, achievable goal. It was a small beacon in the darkness, a possibility for change. The family, along with Mr. Foster, engaged in a hopeful discussion about the future. "We'll start planning as soon as we can," Mr. Foster declared with resolve. Tim's parents, despite their current financial difficulties, shared a renewed sense of optimism. They discussed how they could contribute and support the fundraising efforts. For the first time that day, the family felt a renewed sense of purpose, looking forward to a future where challenges could be met with the robust support of their community. Turning a page on the day's earlier despair, in the quiet corner of the schoolyard, far removed from the lively chatter and commotion, Tim found solace in solitude. Here, he allowed his thoughts to meander through the tumultuous events of the day, from his family's financial hardships to the sting of the morning's disappointment. And finally, to the hopeful promise extended by Mr. Foster. It was a cascade of realities, each demanding its own emotional reckoning. As he sat there, a whirlwind of emotions swirled within him. Anger initially bubbled to the surface as he dwelled on the missed trip and his parents' financial missteps. Yet, as he pondered further, a wave of sadness infused with understanding began to temper his frustration. He considered the immense love and effort his family exerted despite their fiscal constraints. This wasn't a matter of neglect, it was a scenario shaped by tough, unforgiving circumstances. For the first time, Tim truly contemplated the heavy burdens his parents carried daily, the constant juggling of scarce resources and the personal sacrifices they made for the sake of their children. This newfound understanding ushered in a mature perspective, helping him see his parents not merely as providers but as individuals grappling with their own significant challenges. With these reflections, Tim arrived at a pivotal decision. He would return and see his classmates off. It was a small but significant gesture, symbolizing his resolve to rise above the day's disappointments. He wanted to demonstrate that he harbored no ill feelings toward his peers and to preserve the friendships that were immensely important to him. Taking a deep breath, Tim stood up, his heart heavy yet resolute as he walked back towards the bus. Each step was laden with the complex layers of his young life's reality. Yet he moved forward with a firmness born of newly minted wisdom. As he approached his classmates, it was with a spirit that, though bruised, was unbroken and eager to face whatever lay ahead with dignity and grace. Amidst a tapestry of complex emotions, Tim stood at a distance, observing the lively scene as his classmates eagerly boarded the bus. Each laugh and snippet of excited chatter served as a poignant echo of the joy he was missing out on. As the bus filled up, his friends pressed their faces against the windows, their hands waving to those outside. This bittersweet tableau highlighted what could have been, a moment of communal joy that Tim had eagerly anticipated being part of. As the bus engine rumbled to life, Tim's thoughts drifted to the snacks he had meticulously prepared the night before. He had imagined sharing these treats amid laughter and stories, a small but significant part of the shared experience. Now, the neatly packed snacks lay in his hand, tangible symbols of his thwarted excitement and the joy he had envisioned. Holding the bag, a profound blend of sadness and the remnants of last night's anticipation washed over him. In a transformative moment of decision, Tim's heart softened. Realizing he wouldn't need the snacks now, he saw an opportunity to still partake in his friend's day, albeit in a different way. With a renewed sense of purpose, he approached the bus and called out to his friends, offering up the snacks. His gesture, simple yet profound, was met with a burst of surprise and smiles. As he handed over the bag, the atmosphere lightened around him, his act of kindness weaving a small thread of joy through his own fabric of disappointment. His friends' faces lit up with genuine appreciation. "Thanks, Tim, you're the best," they called out, their voices warm with gratitude. In that moment, Tim felt a subtle shift within himself, a sense of relief mingled with pride. Though the day hadn't gone as planned, he had managed to create a meaningful impact, reinforcing the bonds of friendship and community, and finding a sliver of silver lining in the cloud of his disappointment. As Tim's friends jubilantly received the snacks, their warmth and gratitude momentarily drew him into the vortex of excitement he had yearned to be part of. Their surprised and genuine reactions sparked a small, gratifying smile on Tim's face, momentarily lifting the heaviness in his heart. As he turned to leave, savoring this bittersweet mingling of happiness and sadness, a voice called out to him, stopping him in his tracks. It was Mr. Johnson, the father of another student, who had quietly observed the exchange. "That was a very kind thing you did, Tim," he remarked, his voice imbued with respect. Surprised, Tim looked up, finding not just Mr. Johnson but also Stephen, Kevin's father, approaching him with a kind and understanding gaze. "Tim, I've seen how hard this day has been for you," Stephen began, his voice rich with empathy. "Life throws us curves sometimes, but how we handle them truly defines us." His simple yet profound words struck a chord in Tim, who listened intently, a growing sense of solace enveloping him from Stephen's compassionate presence. Stephen continued, his eyes reflecting his sincerity, "I've always believed in the power of kindness. Seeing you here today, giving away your snacks despite your own disappointment, shows a remarkable spirit." He paused, allowing his words to resonate deeply with Tim. "It's important we support each other in tough times. It's what builds a strong community." These affirming words warmed Tim to his core, making him feel understood and valued amid the day's tumult. Then, shifting slightly, Stephen's expression grew even more earnest. "I'd like to offer to pay for your trip to the theme park next time. It's a small gesture to acknowledge your big heart." This unexpected offer, coming from a place of genuine appreciation and community support, deeply moved Tim. It was a tangible sign of the community's strength and kindness, a beacon of hope that even in challenging times, there are always slivers of generosity and understanding waiting to emerge. "It's not charity, Tim. It's a gesture of support from one community member to another," Stephen said gently, his words soft but firm, meant to ease the weight of the offer. Tim was momentarily taken aback, his emotions swirling in a tumultuous mix of gratitude and surprise. The generosity of the gesture rendered him speechless, a flood of emotions washing over him as he looked at Stephen. "I don't know what to say," Tim stammered, deeply touched by the kindness that shone through Stephen's offer. It was a beacon on this day of disappointment, a tangible act of community spirit that reminded him that even in difficult times, there are people ready to extend a hand and make a meaningful difference. Accepting help was not easy for Tim, he had always been taught to be self-reliant. But Stephen's offer was imbued with genuine kindness, not pity, making it a little easier to accept. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson," Tim finally said, his voice quivering with emotion. "I'd be grateful to accept your help." It was a moment of humility and grace, an acceptance of the goodwill extended towards him. As Tim walked toward the bus, his mind was a whirl of thoughts. Accepting help was a blow to his pride, yet he knew it was an act of kindness he should embrace. "Am I doing the right thing?" he wondered silently. The struggle was real, balancing his desire to be independent with the understanding that sometimes it's okay to rely on the kindness of others. With a deep breath, Tim stepped onto the bus. His classmates greeted him with cheers and surprise, their faces lighting up at his unexpected presence. As he found a seat, the bus began to move, and Tim felt a surreal sense of joining a journey he thought he'd missed. The world outside the window blurred into motion, and as the landscape shifted, so did Tim's perspective, now seeing a future where challenges were met with communal support and personal growth. As the bus rolled away, Tim gazed out the window, his heart a swirling nexus of emotions. Excitement, gratitude, and a lingering sense of unease danced within him, each vying for dominance. He was on his way to an adventure he had eagerly awaited, yet the path to this moment had been anything but straightforward. The whirlwind of emotions was both exhilarating and daunting, a complex tapestry that mirrored the complexities of life itself. This trip for Tim became more than just a fun day out, it symbolized the kindness and support of his community. As he laughed and chatted with his friends, he realized the true value of connection and unity. The experience was a vivid reminder that no one is truly alone in their struggles. That a community's kindness can transform a situation of despair into one of hope and joy. Tim returned from the trip with a heart overflowing with happiness and a mind rich with memories. The laughter, the thrill of the rides, and the shared experiences with his friends were treasures he would carry with him forever. The day stood as a testament to the power of community and kindness in overcoming life's challenges. Reflecting on the journey, Tim knew that despite any struggles, there was always room for joy and gratitude in life. Each laugh, each shared moment with his friends, and the support he had received underscored an invaluable lesson. Amidst life's challenges, the warmth of community and the strength of human connections can not only provide solace but also propel one forward into joyful resilience.